Hello to all the debt warriors listening, and welcome back to another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. I'm your host, Katie Fata. It's not uncommon for military members and their families to struggle financially. In fact, for many in the military, financial concerns weigh on them more than deployment. Nearly 9 in 10 active service members and 84% of spouses or partners have worries about personal finances, according to the NFCC. Lack of financial education is a cause for military members to struggle financially. Today's episode will hopefully provide some financial education to military members and their families so they can get back on track with their finances. On this episode, I'll be joined by Karl Martin. Karl is a Marine Corps veteran, and he's a sales manager at MyBaseGuide. MyBaseGuide is a military resource members can use to learn information about their new installment. MyBaseGuide is affiliated with Veteran Life, which is a military resource that strives to inform, entertain, and educate the military community. There were so many topics to discuss in regards to military finances that this will be a two-part episode. In part one, Karl and I will discuss basic pay, retirement funds for military members, the importance of credit, and much more. Now let's get to my interview with Karl. Hi, Karl. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to you and, getting your military background and any financial tips you have for military members out there. So normally I like to just talk in my intro about our guests, but I would like if you could probably talk about your military experience and give the listeners a little bit of your background yourself. Would you be able to do that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, my name's Karl. I retired from the United States Marine Corps after 22 years. I enlisted right out of high school, originally from Portland, Oregon. And I joined the Marine Corps at the time, because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, similar to a lot of young men and women out there with my life, and ended up going into the Marines in the year 2000, in October 2000. Originally came in and became an amphibious assault vehicle crewman, got stationed in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and basically did that. Essentially, it was a tank that floated in the water, and I helped infantry guys going from ship to shore. Did that for about 4 years. I was in the initial invasion of Iraq as an amphibious assault vehicle crewman, and then came back from the deployment and decided I needed to kind of change things up a little bit. I changed jobs over to be what's called a career planner, and I assisted Marines in the military to kind of help figure out different paths of where they wanted to go. Got stationed in Japan. After that, I got to bring my wife and my son with me. We lived in Japan for about 3 years, which is amazing. Dibble dabbled in a lot of different things, got a lot of different training, got to do, a lot of counseling training, things like that. And then got stationed in Northern California, Phoenix, Arizona, San Diego, where I became a recruiting instructor, did a little bit of recruiting for the Marine Corps, and then transitioned over to be a career recruiter, where I helped brand new recruiters, learn how to talk about the Marine Corps in a way that interested young men and women just like myself. And then my last duty station was in Nashville, Tennessee, as the assistant recruiting instructor. And here's where I finished up after 22 years.
Yeah. Wow. You definitely do have such a history with the military. That's so awesome to hear. I did enjoy listening to you talk about your history. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
So we could start the episode off by first talking about understanding military pay. So can you kind of break down military pay for everybody and what goes into it?
Yes. So basic pay is essentially just the fundamental way of how military is paid on a monthly basis. So, it's based off of a rank or a grade system. So we have two different main systems, enlisted ranks, and then we have officer ranks. So the enlisted ranks go from E1 to E9, and then the officer ranks go from O1 to O10. And it's typically determined based off of, the time in the military and how proficient you are in your job. You'll get promoted up the ranks. And, that's essentially where your base pay comes from.
Yeah, got it. And then are there any other financial incentives available for military members aside from their base pay?
Yes. So aside from base pay, we have different allowances that are available for them.
Hmm.
So basic allowance for housing. If you are living out in town, typically, your married military members will get an allowance to assist them with their housing allowance
Hmm.
for certain areas. Obviously, more higher income areas are going to be requiring a higher allowance rate, and it's based off of the census every single year. On top of that, they will also get there's allowance for uh, subsidy. So basically groceries, right? They'll get
Hmm.
a monthly allowance for groceries. And then there's different types of incentive pays. So certain jobs in the military, parachute, riggers or submariners, right? They get additional pay due to the risk or the
Hmm.
hazardous, materials or things like that they're doing. They get additional pays on top of that, which all those are non-taxable.
Okay, got it. And
Yep.
then yeah, so it is different based on where you live, right? That's what you said.
Correct.
So
Yes.
you
Yes.
you had mentioned about living in San Diego, at least to me you mentioned it. So
Yes.
so, so that affected you because it is more expensive to live in San Diego.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so, San Diego is it is one of the more expensive places to live in
Yeah.
the country. And so a lot of our military, although they are able to get on base housing, base housing essentially allows you to live on base,
Hmm.
and they will take that monthly housing allowance rate,
Hmm.
and you'll basically be paying the housing allowance or
Hmm.
your housing allowance to the housing office,
Hmm.
right? But it allows you to stay on base housing, or you do have the option to live out in town.
Okay.
But I mean, when I was stationed in San Diego, I had people driving all the way from Temecula or even
Hmm.
further, all the way up to LA, just to avoid some of the prices that were
Oh
down in the
wow.
San Diego area. Yes, so
Yeah.
people want to commute.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So now that we've kind of covered the base pay and financial incentives, what about a retirement fund for military members? Is there something specific, maybe like a 40K, 401K?
Mhm.
Like what would that be?
Right. So we actually have in the military and for federal employees something called the TSP, which is a
Hmm.
thrift savings plan,
Hmm.
and essentially just a 401k just for federal and
Hmm.
government employees, and that's actually something that I took advantage of.
Hmm.
Luckily, I had a mentor of mine who we were getting ready to deploy on my first deployment, and he said, "Hey, it's a great opportunity. You should put in for this." And I think the stat he gave me was if you put 10% of your base pay in monthly and only invest for 4 years, you'll be a millionaire by the time you're 65. And I was
Oh,
like, all
wow.
right, you got me, right? You got me.
Right.
And so I did. I started putting in, at the time, I ended up doing only 7% of my base pay. And it's essentially very similar to a 401k.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna ask kind of a follow-up to that. So you said 7%. You could
Mhm.
pick how much you want to, what percentage of your base pay you want to put into it.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you can choose where you want it to come from your base pay,
Hmm.
and you can put the percentage, or you can have it allocated to come out of like your special duty pay and things like
Hmm.
that.
Okay.
So a lot of times in the military, there's actually, for certain jobs in the military, they can give you re-enlistment bonuses. So if
Mhm.
you decide to stay in the military, there is, incentives, bulk bonuses, 30, 40, $50,000
Mhm.
that is given to you. Uh, and then you can then have that retirement fund taken out of that if you want as well.
Yeah. I mean, looking it back at it now, are you glad that you did opt in?
I did. I am very because it's one of those ones you just kind of forget about. I
Uh-huh.
honestly, and it gets taken out. It's automatically
Right.
withdrawn from your pay before you even get your pay. So I just,
Hmm.
in a military term, it's kind of a fire and forget weapon. You
Hmm.
don't even realize it's being taken out, and then here I am. Oh, gosh, I was that was in 2003 when I started that. So
Hmm.
20 years later, I just it's just one of those things that's just been taken out nonstop until I retired.
Yeah. I mean, even for us in general, one of my things though with savings is kind of just make it automatic because then you will just get used to it. So
Yes,
that's
yes.
definitely the way to go. So, do you recommend military members invest in other retirement accounts as well, such as maybe like an IRA or a Roth or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely smart. I think, what's the common thing everybody talks about is diversifying. Make sure
Yeah.
you kind of diversify your
Hmm.
income and put it in different places. But the thing with that, similar to a 401k, is you are maxed out per
Hmm.
year on your what you can put into it. I think the last time I heard it was around, I think it was 19,000 for the
Okay.
year. So, if you do have one of those situations where you have a large, let's say a reenlistment bonus
Mhm.
or something like that you get for the year, you can only put a percentage of that into the TSP. And so I think that's a great opportunity
Yeah.
for military members to be able to use additional resources that are out there that are friendly and willing to work with the military. I think that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, definitely diversify your retirement as well as other investments, I'd say. Do you think, I mean, it could be hard when you're in the military to invest in other things, maybe like stocks or something. So, do
Mhm.
you think there are any other ways members in the military could take advantage of investing?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. I've heard, I got a
Hmm.
couple of buddies of mine, they actually use, real estate, right? They've
That's
bought,
a good one.
homes. I've bought 3 homes in my time in the military. From when I
Hmm.
was a very young Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps, I bought my first home in Hubert, North Carolina, for $79,000.
Hmm.
It was brand new 3-bedroom home, and a lot of times what military men and women will do is they'll buy the home, and then typically every 2 to 3 years you're having to move with
Hmm.
orders, and so they'll keep that home and they'll rent it out, or they'll use a property management company to continue to rent that property out, and things like that. So there's I think real estate's a great way for for
Yeah.
for military members to diversify.
Yeah, that is such a great example. And that's, some good advice for somebody in the
Mhm.
military. So yeah, real estate investing could definitely be a good kind of side hustle for someone to financially prepare for their
Yeah.
future. So now that we've established how military pay is broken down and how military members can save, how should someone in the military go about budgeting what's left? And how important is it to budget for military members?
Extremely. I
Yeah.
would say it's really important, and this is one of those things that I feel a lot of young military men and women, it's extremely important, right? And I mean,
Hmm.
if you really think about it, it's their first time. I was a young 18-year-old Marine, first time away from home, didn't have parents to kind of, I was living all the way across the country. And so it's the first time you're away from your family. It's the first time you're kind of on your own and you're having decent pay. I mean, if you really think about it, you have a young service member who lives, in the barracks. They're getting, I think an E1 in the military right now is making about, $1,900 a month. And they're not paying for rent.
Hmm.
They're not paying for food, right? Because they have the on-base chow or lunch facilities that's free for them.
Hmm.
They're not paying for utilities, electricity, water, all those basic necessities are taken care of them, take care for them. So, that money is just kind of sitting there, and it's important to make sure on top of, once you've given if you can invest into a retirement fund, but then you're still going to have, 15, $1,600 left over. And so
Hmm.
it's really important to kind of educate our young men and women out there in military with that new, fresh money that's coming in as they get promoted to make sure they use it smartly. I've seen many. As a matter of fact, I have a kind of a funny story. When I was a young Marine, we had I'm kind of dating myself, back in 2000, but a Marine had gone to the store and purchased a brand new cell phone. And this is back in the time when you had to pay for minutes,
Yeah.
right? It wasn't just all, free minutes.
Hmm.
And so he had fallen asleep on the phone with his girlfriend from back home overnight.
Oh my gosh.
And yes, roaming charges. And he, the next month, got a bill in the mail. And I want to say it was a couple $1,000s.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness.
And so it's really important for these service members to understand, that you got to understand just the basics of what's available out there, because they have some decent money in their pockets and
Yeah.
they need to know where they want to spend it. So
Yeah. I mean, like you said, like savings during that time is important because they might not have a family of their own yet at that point. So they can
correct.
really, amplify their savings and investing and such. So they should definitely take advantage of that when they're young.
Yes, yes.
So talking about the budgets for military members, do you think there are certain budget categories that apply to military members that might not necessarily apply to other people?
Yeah, I would say, being in the military it's such a unique experience. One of the biggest things, and I kind of talked about before, was the PCSing, permanent change of station.
Hmm.
When you have to move across the country, especially when you have a family, that's a very large, I mean, just imagine, a lot of my veterans know exactly what I'm talking about. But hey, congratulations, this January, you just got orders to move across the country. You have to now take your kids out of school. You have to figure out how you're going to sell your house. In my instance, I was stationed in Phoenix, Arizona, where I was in a house, 3,100 square feet home in Arizona. When I moved to San Diego, I went down to 1,200 square feet. And
Yeah.
so you have to figure out a way. Okay, I sell all my furniture. Where am I going to put all my stuff? Do I going to buy new furniture when I get to San Diego? I mean, there's just so many things that go along with PCSing, right? Transporting cars. Do I have to sell this car? When I was going from Okinawa to Northern California, where I was stationed at, it snowed about 300 inches a year. It's actually up in the Sierra Mountain Range near Mammoth and Lake Tahoe. And so I had to buy a 4-wheel drive vehicle like the first month I was there.
Mm.
So with PCSing, that's a thing you definitely have to make sure you keep in mind as where you're going and what's going to go into, as far as what expenses are going to go along with that PCS. And then obviously monthly or weekly things, haircuts.
Mm.
A lot of people don't realize that for males in the military, you got to get a haircut every other week or every week. So that's an expense that every single week you got to get a haircut. Dry cleaning, you got to get your clothes dry cleaned. They do give you a clothing allowance every year. It's once a year they will give you a clothing allowance, a couple $100 to kind of refresh your uniforms and things like that. But there's always going to be instances throughout the year. If you're out in the field and you're running around in your camouflage uniform and you jump on the ground and tear them open, you get those fixed or buy a new set, things like that. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing is just there's so many different nuances that come with it's so unique with the military with having to move around so much. I think it's just it's a lot that goes into it, a lot of planning.
Yeah, definitely. And I wouldn't even think of the haircuts and the dry cleaning. That's so important to bring up. So they don't provide any haircuts on base or anything, or where you are, you have to find someone else, like a barber yourself. I'm just curious now.
No, that's a great question.
I didn't know.
I guarantee any veterans are listening to this right now. Yes, 100%. There are hair, there are barbers.
But it's not great.
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. Right? It's an $8 haircut. Let's just put it like that. Right. Okay. And so yes, first, right out of boot camp, you don't really care. You're just like, yeah, whatever. Give me a high and tight, and I'm ready to rock and roll. But as you get a little bit older, right, you kind of have a little bit of a social life. You want to make sure you have a nice cut.
Right.
And so, yes, you're going to have to go out in town and find a good barber who you trust, and then, all that stuff. So you do have to make sure you're going to pay for what you like. So a lot of service members, they'll pay for the $30, $45 haircut.
Yeah, I'm all for good looking hair, so we'll definitely have to put a category in our budgets for that for sure. And we're going to touch a little bit on PCS2 more in the next episode, in part 2 of this as well. So we'll continue that conversation then.
Great.
So let's talk about credit in military members. So is a credit score important for military members?
Yes, it is extremely important. So in my time as a recruiter, one of the things that I had to do was every single person that goes into the military as a brand new accession, they actually get put in for a background check. And that's part of the accession into joining the military is you get put in for a security clearance. And with that, one of the biggest problems with getting a security clearance is if you are carrying a large amount of debt. That has been one of the biggest things. And then also being in the military, maintaining that security clearance is extremely important. I've got I had a friend of mine who actually could not stay in the job that he had been trained in because unfortunately he had made some financial mistakes and he had a car repoed and he couldn't get ahead of the credit card debt. And it caused a lot of problems on his credit score. And he actually lost his security clearance, or it took him longer to get a security clearance. But when it was time for him to come up for reenlistment into his job, he couldn't stay in the job. Yeah, which was really unfortunate. So he had to now choose a whole new job that didn't require security clearance. And usually those types of positions are going to be the ones that maybe don't necessarily want to be doing. So
yeah, definitely. And that is like one reason why military members should stay on top of their credit score. But how else can they stay on top of their credit score while in the military? And is it difficult?
So there is, obviously you have the 3 credit companies.
Hmm.
On-base resources are great. They have a finance office on every
Okay.
single military installation. You can get your free creditreport.com, which is heavily
Yeah.
pushed by the finance office. But I would say that the support system on the base is usually typically you're going to have an office, maybe one or two people that are available. They can sit down with you and they can kind of walk you through what you're looking at. And then obviously they can help you run your credit score and help you get it within the box and kind of help you out. So,
So the finance office, is that like do they like do financial counseling? Like how can members of the military get counseling then with their finances? Would that be where someone goes or is there another resource?
yeah, they can do that. There's websites out there, yeah, honestly, one thing that I found in my experience is other service members. One of the best things that we've learned is just kind of word of mouth. Service members trust each other. I've got a buddy of mine, like I said, who got me onto the thrift savings plan.
Mhm.
And if you have military guys who have experience, right, who are smart with their investments, or have worked with a company that's kind of put them on it, one of the best ways to assist our military is to put them in contact with the companies that are going to take care of them and are going to essentially kind of guide them in the right direction. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, typically on base they'll have like one finance guy who or
Mhm.
gal who is they've made a living out of kind of financial planning, and they can help you with your budget. They can help you kind of build a budget if you've never done one before. Talk about snowball of your
Mhm.
credit card debt, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, definitely. And exactly, you're just talking about debt. So, it can be hard to deal with debt if you're in the military. So, I was just looking up
Mm-hmm.
27% of service members have more than $10,000 in credit card debt, which is actually like more than the regular, higher percentage than the regular person. So,
Yeah.
why do service members acquire more debt than the average person?
That's a great question. I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? I think that it's the first time they've had decent money in
Yeah.
their pockets,
Mhm.
and they get used to spending and they like to have nice things. Here's one thing that I was thinking about
Mhm.
recently was job security.
Mhm.
Military is essentially, they have a great job security.
Yeah.
As long as they do what they're told, as long as they are coming to work every day and they're doing their job well, they're going to be able to stay in and they're going to have great job security. No matter what, the government is going to give them a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th.
Mhm.
And so having that type of job security where for a fact that you're going to get paid, it kind of maybe extends your ability or your thoughts of what you can do, right? So hey, yeah, I can go get this brand new F-150 Tremor edition with the jacked up wheels for
Right.
$71,000 with a 15% interest rate, and I can afford an $800 $900 a month $1,000 a month payment because I'm making $2,000 a month, right?
Mhm.
Things like that. And they just don't realize that, oh wait, I forgot about my haircuts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so there's things like that I think that they just kind of maybe get above their skis, get ahead of their skis, and oh, I'll put on the credit card this time, then I'll pay it off, and then
Right.
that credit card is that secret thing in the drawer you don't really think about.
Right.
And so I think that's really what it is job
Yeah.
security is allows them to feel that safety net,
Yeah.
um, to kind of do things like that.
Yes, definitely. So what could they do if they're struggling with debt after they didn't budget correctly? What can military members do if they're struggling with debt?
Yeah, so that's that, and goes back to that finance office. I would
Hmm.
say,
Yeah.
going back to the finance office, talking with them, helping them out. There are great resources
Hmm.
on base that can help them out. My wife actually helped. She worked with the Navy Marine Corps Relief Society, and that's a
Hmm.
that's a Marine Corps thing where essentially it's a zero interest loan to assist service members. So, for example, right? I mean, this isn't across the nation. I'm assuming, but not many people have a big savings account,
Right.
right? And so
Hmm.
the truck breaks down. I need, $3,000 for a brand new transmission. If they're struggling with their debt and they don't have a good safety net, they can
Hmm.
go to a resource on base and get a quick loan to kind of help them at least get their truck up and running again. But
Right.
with that resource, they are going to force them to do a budget. They are going to show them, hey, you're spending this amount of money on vehicles. You're essentially putting out this amount per month, but you're only taking in this much, and you don't have a whole lot of wiggle room there. So that's really the biggest one I would say in my
Hmm.
experience is just sitting a service member down and letting them see, hey, have you thought about this? Oh, the holidays are coming up. Have you budgeted for all the holidays this year? Right? Kind of putting a little bit aside and preparing so that you're not going into, hey, Thanksgiving's over. Now I got to spend $2,000 on Christmas presents all at once in the month of December.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Having that emergency fund, that backup savings is important for everybody as well. So as you said, like they can go to the finance office and get some resources they need, to learn how to budget and everything. And I think, maybe provide them the education they need, and that education maybe could help them avoid debt. Do you think there's any other ways they can avoid debt other than that? Or
I just think education is really, in my experience, that's really the biggest one, is just making them aware of what is coming in is really the biggest one I've seen. Right. I mean, it's educating our young military. If they start to build the habits at a younger age and be aware that, there's rainy days will come and you have to be prepared for that. And that's where utilizing your resource, utilizing fellow service members, for our young military. Talk to your seniors, talk to your senior, enlisted, your senior officers, and kind of, if you're thinking about getting married, right, that's a whole financial investment you have to get into, right? If you're thinking about, and then also, is your new spouse going to be bringing on college loan debt, things like that. You got to really just educate and make them aware of what's out there so that they can be prepared. That's really,
yeah, definitely. Education is, financial education is the key, even in the military and not in the military. So yeah, definitely. And we provide so much financial education at Navicore. So I will link everything in the description of this podcast for that. But I think that wraps up everything I have for part 1 of this episode. And we really are just breaking the surface on this topic. So I'm excited that you're going to be joining me again for another episode of this. So thank you for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So I look forward to talking to you next time for part 2.
Perfect. Thank you.
It was great talking to a veteran who dedicated a large portion of their life to the services. It was also great to hear about his real life experiences, and I enjoyed some of the examples he gave. Opting into the TSP retirement fund was a great decision for Karl. Having a mentor advise him to do it is what persuaded him to start saving for his retirement. It's great to have a mentor in the military to share their life experiences with the younger generation so that they can make the right financial decisions for themselves. A budget is just as important to military members as it is to the average person. Not only do they have to have the normal budget categories, but they also have to have some niche categories as well, such as the clean haircut. Having a good credit score is essential for military members because background checks are conducted. You also need to stay on top of your credit while you're in the military. Don't fall victim to charging too much on your credit card because your credit score will take a hit. Visit the finance office if you're in debt and need assistance. They'll be able to show you how to budget for your expenses. This education will help you avoid debt while in the military. Next month, I'll be talking to Karl again about preparing your finances for pre-deployment, college, and many other topics, so tune in then. With that being said, that wraps up another episode of Millennial Debt Domination. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, and if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please rate and review us there. I'll talk to you next time, Millennials, Gen Zers, and everyone else listening. Bye!